because not only are we excited about the boots we make here, but we're also excited about what we do. So today we're going to be walking around the shop. It's quiet here. Production is gone for the day, and we're going to walk through and just kind of talk step by step about what goes on here in a daily basis. So let's start with leather. All the leather is pulled from these shelves here. It's mostly divided by, some of our thicker work leather and then some of our heritage leathers. So mostly Seidel and Horween. And, leather is just cut, it's just cut like cookies. We use a hydraulic press, and we use these what are called clicker dies. And pretty much the cutter gets the ticket, he gets the recipe, and it tells them all the parts and pieces to cut out. They use a cheat sheet here. They do like to batch because obviously if you're going to be cutting one black boot, you probably want to lump in a couple more for efficiency. So this is the cutting station. We've got 3 currently. We've added another one over here just because we're staying busy. But these guys really, if they read the ticket wrong, the boot might walk through here and the other stations might not necessarily know if they've made a mistake or not. So it's a high concentration job. You gotta work quickly, and they're dealing with lots of configurations. Going over here, this is a splitting machine. This is a Fortuna, a German machine. And some of the parts and pieces get sent through the splitting machine, and it essentially is a band knife, and it splits the leather and it makes it easier to handle. For example, some of the top facing material in a boot up here, you don't want that a full 7-8 ounces, so they split that down to reinforce the top of the boot. Your false tongues are also going to be split. You don't necessarily want a full 7 to 8 ounce false tongue in your boot, so they split that down. Once the parts are cut, they do come over here. This is a prepping station where we have a couple skiving machines. And the skiving machines are designed like a splitter to split down or shave down the thickness of the material. That makes the parts and pieces a little bit easier to put together and sew. As wonderful as it sounds to have 8 ounces on top of 8 ounces on top of 8 ounces, at the end of the day that becomes very difficult to actually sew, and it makes for an extremely uncomfortable boot because you've got layers stacked up on spots you don't want them stacked up. So all the skiving and preparation happens here, all the gluing happens here, and once this kit is prepped, it comes over here as a set, and you've got all your parts and pieces to put the boot together. And here you can see those skiving marks I was talking about, where they thin that leather, especially on the blucher, so you don't have all that material stacked up pushing up against the side of your foot. The backstays are also skived. That makes it easier to sew them together and allows you a little bit more flexibility at the Achilles tendon. From there, the sewers are going to pick and they're going to start sewing. Each station specializes in its own step of the process. Some sewers can sew the entire process. We should also show you the training that happens here. This is going to be painful for many of you to see, but to become a sewer, we essentially cut parts from hides. Bellies and shoulders, parts that are not really deemed production worthy, and the sewers are trained to sew on actual boots. And so here you can see, 3 or 4 pair. We have another training station over here. And sad but true, these boots are probably just going to go in the trash or cut into further scrap. But we don't want sewers sewing until they're completely ready to work on production boots. All right, let's go back this way. There's also some rebuilds here that get prepped. You can see, and this is the upper part of the boot that's old, but tucked inside here are all of the new pieces that will be used to sew it back together. We use post bed machines. This allows the sewer to articulate the boot around a post. A traditional flatbed machine doesn't really allow you to do three-dimensional sewing, and so post machines are really the name of the game in footwear. Once the boots are partially sewn together, they'll come over here and they'll get the classic Nick's Handmade Boots stamp on them. This is just a hydraulic press that they'll set the boot under, and they'll press the logo on. Once the boots are all sewn, they come over here and then they're put on the eyelet machine to get the hardware punched in. You can see some sample pieces here. In the morning, they want to make sure that this machine is firing correctly. It's an incredible machine, but pretty, I don't want to say violent, but you know, if it's not firing right, you know, it's going to mess up a perfectly sewn boot. So they want to make sure that this machine is operating properly. Right around the corner is the hook machine, which is a much more forgiving machine. That's simply, you know, one press of the pedal inserts one hook, where this is an automatic feed machine, which is pretty cool. All right, let's come on over to the next step in the process. Once the boots are fully sewn, they come over here to what we call the lasting rack. And that's where we pull the actual last that the boot will be built on, and that's where we tack on our veg tan insole. From there, the boot moves on to what we call wet lasting. For the thicker boots, the boot is actually soaked in water, and then it's pulled around the last to take a set. Tacked in the heel, tacked in the toe. This is really where you get the straightness of the lasting. And so this job is really important to make sure that you're setting the upper on the last perfectly. And then it dries overnight, and in the morning it can then be what we call dry lasted. Over here is, well, not right now. Here we go. These boots have cured overnight, and now they're getting what we call dry lasted. So you can see how many more nails are added. So this is, you know, overnight it's the preliminary pull, setting the form, and then in the morning it's the final pull. And you can see every little mark here is where they're grabbing this with lasting pliers and tacking it in to hold the form of the boot. Once the boot is done, is lasted, we come over here. We put the shank on. It's a veg tan leather shank, 3 to 4 nails. And then it comes over here to the bottoming department, where they're gonna prep the veg tan midsole, and then they're also gonna prep the outsole, and that's what we call bottoming. And then they're also gonna drive several nails through the bottom of the boot. These nails go through the midsole, into the insole, and then they're clinched over once they hit the bottom of the metal last. Once the boots are bottomed, they get trimmed on this machine to create a consistent perimeter in preparation for sole stitching. The sole is glued on the boot, and then it goes into the Rapidity machine. They lock it in here and they run the sole stitching. These machines are very specialized. There's not very many of them left, so we try to take care of them. They can also be very frustrating. Once they're stitched, the boots come over. There's the stitching. They come over to heeling. At the heeling station, they're gonna put a veg tan leather heel stack on, and then they're gonna put the rubber cap on top of that. You can see all the nails that go all the way through the layers to hold everything together. And then the rubber cap goes on, and it also gets several nails. So that is heeling. We'll come over here quickly to sanding. The boots are then sanded to make sure that we have a clean perimeter around the entire boot. You can see here they arrive at sanding very rough. And then once they're done with the sanding process, you get that beautiful logger heel profile. The sanders have to be extremely careful not to sand into the stitching. That can be pretty difficult, but it's really just a finesse game where they're doing their best to make sure they're keeping consistency around the perimeter of the boot. Once the boots are sanded, they come on over to finishing. And there you can see that beautiful sanded heel and the logger style. Here's a mock toe with a little bit easier sanding job. That's just a wedge sole. They're pulled from here to finishing. Here in finishing, they clean off some of that sanding dust. This is where they glue in your sock liner that covers some of those bottoming nails. And then they add wax and stains to get the boots looking finished and ready for boxing. And right now there's no finished boots because they've all been shipped out for the day. So that's just a kind of a quick intro to what we do here. There's obviously a lot more involved in the process, but this just gives you an idea of all the steps that these boots go through, start to finish, from each station. Actual touch time where the boot makers are touching the boot, is around 2.5 to 3 hours. And that's pretty efficient if you think about it. Total curing time, and when we add the total time to make a boot, it can actually extend about 3 days because we want all of the layers to cure and glue properly. So thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for some more cool shop videos and other things we're working on here.